Welcome to another episode of Coach's Corner, where we talk about the impact coaching has on the lives of human capabilities, combining, the mental approach to execution with physical skills and development. And with us today, I'm really excited. We have Jimmy Fortescue. So he'll be talking to us on Coach's Corner. I know Jim personally. We went to high school together, and Jim has had a lot of accomplishments in his career. He's currently CEO and founder of Piton Investments. Did I pronounce that correctly, Jim?
It's Piton, actually.
That's right. And so he's been the founder and CEO, all while scaling and developing a multi-billion-dollar wealth advisory called US Capital Wealth and founding and running ClearShares, right? So it doesn't really sound like something one human being can do, and he definitely can't do it alone. So I'm assuming there's a lot of coaching, a lot of people supporting him on the journey. And I'm excited to talk to you today, Jim, about those lessons you learned, about how coaching has impacted your personal development and how you develop people in your organizations around you. And especially like if I think about your career, I think about you as COO of a publicly traded multi-billion-dollar company, Annaly, right? That you started. I think you were basically running coffee in the beginning for folks and then developed yourself all the way up to running the entire multi-billion-dollar organization. Is that inaccurate, Jim?
A lot of coffee. A lot of coffee.
So, hey, tell me a little bit about kind of your journey, coaches that you've faced that helped you really go on that what I would call getting shot out of a rocket ship career path that led you to become COO of a multi-billion-dollar public company, Jim.
Yeah, so I don't really ever believe in luck, but as you frame some of it, I certainly could see how that would be the case. But this is Coach's Corner, and you kind of teed this up a little bit with you can't be a good coach without having a great team, right? Like so,
Yep.
and it started with being a great teammate, right? So how do you like your coffee, right? And how many coffees do we need, right? So inclusion instead of exclusion of people, and thinking of everybody as a partner instead of somebody that works for you really kind of took me in a lot of different directions. But as you shared, I was the third person of a company that ended up becoming Annaly Capital. And I just would say that I had tremendous amount of exposure at a young age, just learning things. Goldman, Bear Stearns, Morgan Stanley, they didn't want me. So I found a great mentor to this guy named Mike Farrell. And he had started a business where he wanted to bring fixed income to the equity markets. And I was there in the early stages of it. There was different points and times of our careers that you really had to be in the foxhole with the team, right? So I would add 9/11 to one of those things where how did you do business the next day, right? I walked to work on September 12th and got the businesses kind of up and going and rolling. Um, and just met tremendous people along the way, and the empathy that you had for them and those who were lost and things like that, right? It becomes part of your fabric. So, was an amazing kind of run. 2008 obviously was pivotal to a lot of different stuff. I was kind of given a lot of the credit for saving the company in the middle of the financial crisis, and the company grew from what I described as $130 million to several different parts of that, where by the time I exited, we had $15 billion in capital, but me and my partner were overseeing about 125 billion in business investments. But we also always had other things in the lab, right? So we had 15 onshore and offshore kind of mutual funds that we're doing across the globe. We that eventually started three different public REITs, and we would let shareholders kind of pick their risk. But I learned what a fiduciary was, which really means you have to say what you do and do what you say, right? And the shareholder comes first. And during 2008, when everybody was scared, we were long mortgages at that time, which was kind of the most toxic structure that was in the markets. So long means we had purchased and held them, and I would extrapolate that to younger people as mortgages were the COVID of 2019-20, right? It was everybody was uncertain what was going to happen next. Nobody really had the information. So it was about price discovery, communication, working with people, having kind of great teams and, friendships and stuff like that.
Yeah, and Jimmy, there's a couple of things that you talked about there that really sit home with me, right? Like when Annaly Capital was a $12 billion company, you're actually managing 150 billion at the same time, and you've since, started all these multiple $100 billion businesses that you're part of, and it's not just one, right? Some people are lucky to do it one time. You've done it at least now 5 times, and you mentioned the name Mike Farrell in your discussion. And I know that he, as a coach, as a mentor, and as a friend, means so much to you that one of your 3 children is named Farrell, I believe, after Mike, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's a very uncommon story to name, one of your child's after your boss, right?
Yeah.
Forget about the name is a little uncommon too, Farrell. I mentioned 9/11. I had a buddy that lost his brother on 9/11. I was on the phone with him, and he named his daughter Farrell, right? So it kind of smoothed the rails a little bit. But my little daughter Farrell, yeah, she was named after Mike. But Mike was a tremendous visionary. I watched him on his last paycheck. We can talk about all the hundreds of billions and whatever, but like, a true foxhole guy, unbelievable stories, right? I said to you kind of early, like, because I had started at the startup, which, you're training people to do that every day, every week, it was like I had exposure to such amazing things at such a young age, right? And, it was you stub your toe, you bang your ankles and whatever, and you kind of learn from them. And some of that's leverage. We spent a little bit on, relationships that I just discussed before and really how to be an ethical business partner because at the end of the day we're selling trust and you have to really kind of be able to validate what your dreams are. So Mike was the best at that, right? So I got to watch that, right next to him day in and day out. And, there wasn't, we didn't spend a lot of time talking about money. We didn't spend a lot of time talking about anything. It was really all about taking care of shareholders and driving dividends into their mailboxes and improving their lives. So but it was a roller coaster like anything, right? It wasn't ups and downs and markets change and people come and go. Banks have different kind of mission statements and some are there and whatever. So helping people that were good to you also extend their career became a big part of my career, as well as I sat in the same seat for 20 years.
Yeah, and Jimmy, as I hear you talk about Mike and the impact, right? A lot of the folks in my life that are closest to me, I think have given to me, right? And as a coach, as someone who's willing to help me develop and learn, maybe as a mentor, and I could see how that has created such a tight relationship, right? And as a coach, and you mentioned twice today already the word exposure, right? In terms of your ability to learn how to perform based on exposure. But it's more than just exposure. And I talked about, this really meteoric career journey that you've been on. Tell us about maybe a little bit of rigor or maybe a process that you've deployed or you feel as though is part of your DNA that help you convert exposure to actually skills, the skills that are both transferable skills, but also helped you tactically execute in your career. What process or rigor have you followed, Jim?
I mean, me and you have touched on this at, in social times a little bit is that when I think of exposure, I really think of, being a listener, right? And
Yeah.
not putting myself so far out there with knowledge that I don't have, right? So the ability to osmosis, watch people, the ability to absorb what the journey is going to be, to really kind of listen to what problems other people are sharing, right? So in 2008, the biggest problem everybody was sharing was a balance sheet problem, right? They had losses on their books and across the board. So they had to figure out how to get the right price discovery around what what those assets were, right? So we all think of ourselves and what I do, and you've seen you do this live, is when I speak to young people, I talk to them about we're all our own company, right? So, and when you think of, coaching, or you think of a company, right, you have to think of the team, right? How is the team
Yep.
forming? You know, what does the leadership look like? Doing things in silos, how does that break stuff down and whatever? So it was kind of really like all the cliche stuff that's on a t-shirt and a hat now, one team, one dream. And the reason I'm not at that company is because Mike Farrell, passed away, a young guy, 62 years old, didn't smoke, didn't drink, and got cancer, and left us way too early. And like I said, I watched him fight through paying my paycheck, forget about his own, and growing his whole family. So, that osmosis, across the board. And then when you can actually help champion somebody, whether it's a young mother or a father trying to be there for their family, if you can help champion them by being their eyes and ears at a different stage of their different chapter, different stage, say it anyway, of their life and their career, it goes very far, right? So, and that builds loyalty and trust, and believe it or not, and then the ability to articulate that because you heard it, you listened to it, right? So, you can dream big, but your dream doesn't always have to be the case study, right? Like it's be like there's some version of that dream that you really need to want to come true, right? So, like I can come up with a big idea, but
Yep.
once I sit with the team, it's more about what really will work, and some of that takes capital, some of that takes, we used to say all the time at the public company, and you kind of asked me this question is what did I do, right? I would sit with everybody, and prior to that, I did it, right? So, and I would call pushing the rock up the hill every day, right? Every day that rock's got to go to the top of the hill, and once it gets to the top, nobody really cares how it got there. They just want to make sure it's there, and whether it's management or others, if it doesn't get there, then they have a bunch of questions on what the process were, what the people you used, why you made this mistake or whatever. So you put that rock at the top of the hill, all good, but then you come back in the next day and it's back at the bottom. So you have to start that cycle. And that's led to a lot of regulation, right? A lot of different parts of industries of compliance, right? Making sure people are doing things the right way, which, you know, causes some drama in companies, but, it's become kind of the way we live now.
Yeah, and Jimmy, I don't know if my listeners picked up on this, but the process you mentioned, right, is I did it first, and then I shared what I did with people, and then I sat back and I listened, right, and then I included them in that process, right, and that was, I'm assuming you did that and maybe took that process as you were developing yourself, and that became part of your coaching DNA as you were working with your teams, right? And I think that's pretty amazing. And Jim, I do want to share with you, and I've never shared this with you ever, but one of the things that impresses me about you and that I think makes you amazing, it's not the three multi-billion-dollar companies that you currently run and have started and run more, but the fact that you're able to do that, and while doing that, I personally witnessed you be a great father, right? And also be a present father to Farrell and her two siblings. So, and I've watched you from a philanthropy perspective freely give your time, right, and your money, but also your time to people. And you mentioned, kids and working with kids in different groups that you work with. Like, how the heck do you do that? Like most successful people I've seen at your level when I was growing up, they just didn't have that much time to give, and because their time was so precious to continue to make money and run businesses. But you seem to crack the code. You give time and have time to be present for people. How do you do that, Jimmy?
Yeah, I mean, I don't look at any of it like that, right? So thank you for the statements, but like, number one, it's my responsibility. Number two, being accountable to what's a very challenging thing of raising kids, and being there and teaching them the difference between right and wrong. And,
Yep.
it's got to be fun a little bit too, because it's hard, right? So just like running a company is hard, right? Like you just to dribble back for a second, like, the technology wasn't all there when I did these jobs, right? Like, so I did a lot of stuff manual, right? So, and what I would say to anybody in any business, and certainly with family, goes the same thing is that if you're not there, you have to make yourself replaceable, right? Like, so, and especially if you want to grow and go, right? Like, if you want to go and do more challenging things, you want to, whatever, that job has to be done right. So that could be a restaurant, which, I've had my hands in that a little
Yeah.
bit once in a while, or certainly on a parenting level, like it's the biggest thing. So if I look at that and you hear all the best guys, though, best guys and gals, they say their biggest, their biggest achievement in life will be what their kids turn out to be, right? So
Yep.
we're all, you know, if everybody just did one good thing every day or just treated people the right way, this world would be a lot easier, right? So it doesn't matter what color or race or or religion you are or whatever it is. It's like if you can kind of do something to lift somebody else's life up every once in a while, that's great. And and I think all of us could say we learned that from our parents, or we learned that from watching somebody that took a role model scenario like that, right? But my family didn't have anything to give, but I certainly watched, at every turn, whether it was helping pack boxes for a charity or put a ribbon on something or whatever, they were always there for people and charity along the way, and so that's the gift of being blessed, right? So, and that's why I don't use the word luck. It's just like find those positive people that want to make a difference. Everybody work on those solutions together, and that'll be it. But my kids are hitting a pivotal age here, Dan, so I don't want to
Right.
give any accolades right now because I was far from perfect and littered with mistakes, but dumb enough to catch myself before they went overboard.
Yeah, yeah, and you'll be there to catch your kids, and as I give them the ideas of bad things that they should think about doing,
I didn't know if we could bring that up. Bring that up.
I'm a creative guy, and so I try to help them out when I can. Hey, Jim, a lot of what SymTrain does in coaching, AI coaching for contact center agents across the globe has been rooted in athletics, right? And spaced practice, right? Things like, making practice harder than the game. Your whole life is revolved around the hockey rink, right? I think you were the younger brother of a great hockey player. And you played too, right?
Can you curse on this thing?
Look, that guy's a friend stealer. It's all I know. But look, as an athlete, right? As you know, but your family members, right, have actually achieved, some major accolades, right? I think national gymnastics champion. We have some world-class baseball, hockey, multiple hockey players, even NHL level achievement. What would you say is the kind of coaching that has been embedded or part of the lives of so many highly accomplished athletes that and are even family members with that has given them the ability to exceed at such a high level?
Yeah, I mean it's a difficult formula, right? Some of it is innate, which means just in it within, right? Like they gotta want it themselves a little bit. But no, if you expose them to the right people, right? Like we mentioned Mike Farrell, if you have the right coaches around you, if you have whatever, it becomes, the compounding effect is massive. Like you brought up all these different things in a pot, right? And they're all don't know each other, all didn't work with each other, but like there's certain groupings that they competed against each other at a young age, right? But I think the number one thing is some of it is sitting back and watching, and others is, you know, letting them wash out their bad days and then being encouragement of what it could be. Because, I know you've met some of my other friends that are great coaches and whatever. Everybody's on their own path, right? So, and the stress of where a kid is at 8, 9, 10, 15 years old, doesn't mean that somebody can't really turn up the heat at 21 and find themselves, right? So, and there are certain sports, certain things that you can't do that, but like, you know, I mean, why not me, right? Why, that kind of vision for yourself of like, why not me? Or I'm ready to do the work, or this will make me happy, whatever. But like, yeah, they're all grinders. Everything's about grit and perseverance when you want to do it. And some of them are physically gifted and others are just work hard.
Yeah. And Jimmy, I'm going to repeat something right now because you said there's three things that kind of fit with all of these folks who achieve such great success. Number one, it's a difficult formula. So there's a formula. Number two, drive. They have to have it within, inside the belly. And you said number three, there's the mental approach to this thing. Why not me? Right. And the formula that you mentioned earlier, right, is when you do something, you share it, let people experience it, and then sit back and listen and include the group and drive. But you mentioned mental, right? And why not me? Tell me, Jim, a little bit, or tell us all a little bit in your perspective, the difference between skills development, driving a certain level of capability, and the mental development, meaning the wherewithal to know that I can do this thing, right? Where do those things come together, or where are they different and split in your mind?
Yeah, that's a tough one. Um,
Sorry.
no.
Want me to change it and I'll make it
No,
easier?
no, no, no. It's so, I think when you don't have the physical gifts, then, and I'll just say a lot of people that I know, when you don't have the physical gifts, then it is all mental, right? So you have to figure out how you can compound and compete with the gifts that you do have, right? So that just takes nonstop grit, and I'm just working on the little things that whatever, and people have a hard time being vulnerable, right? So, you practice the stuff that you're best at, whether that's any sport, basketball, golf, hockey, football, whatever. You keep working on the one thing that you're good at, right? Like, what's the thing that, is your weakness, right? So to find those weaknesses, and that could be strength, it could be speed, it could be just instincts, whatever. But the mental approach to everything in life, because we know it's not easy to be a person, it's certainly not easy to be a parent, it's not easy, like the mental approach is key, right? So, and then having gratitude for having, the ability to do that is like it's just a massive scenario. And I think we learned growing up, with the friends that we have or the people that we still organize ourselves around, which we don't see each other much, but like there's a certain sense of humility. Like nobody wants to hear how great you are, right? Like so you really have to do a lot with humility, right? Like there has to be, and I know we align on, the high school and stuff like that experiences is like nobody was going to get away with telling everybody that they were the best, right? Everybody would knock them down to size and in seconds, like in seconds, right? And you would realize that you know, if you want to be something, that you have to know that there's always somebody maybe bigger, stronger, and faster.
And you know that, I'm hugely passionate about delivering this digital coach to everyone in the world. If you were able to provide me some personal coaching based on the assessment that you have and some guidance for me to accomplish my goals, what would you coach me on, Jim?
So I don't think that's can be done in a podcast, right? No, I mean I really would love to get in the swamp, right? Like kind of sit down and really talk about where everything is, how you get that million people, what you and the team think that they need to be trained on, right?
Yeah.
How that gets monetized, right? So I always say when it gets too complicated, simplify it. And I would need to simplify the steps in the process that you do really to know where to point and shoot. The real answer is if you didn't ask that question, I just think because of your drive, it's going to happen, right? So, and when I say drive, that means passion, right? Like you've been at this for a while, and like and back to the other statement of why not you, right? So, and I haven't really slowed down to kind of really dig in enough on it lately, which I just mentioned a couple minutes ago. Like, go teach me. I'd love to know what I'm missing. And why I went there is because when we were walking through the early stages of my career and how I, you know, helped create and train people that were ended up being better than me, at what I needed to do, and we needed all of that. You don't go from 30 million to 125 billion without like really being able to scale, which so you could call it pushing the rock, but that's a lot of work, right?
Yeah.
And that's what we did, right? We had the right vendors, we and I still do today. We had the right vendors, we had the relationships, but there was one point in time where we were, 50 billion, 50 people with 50 billion, right? So it wasn't like more is not always better. It's really about how that communication and to create efficiency. And that's what everybody's saying AI is about to do.
Hey, we covered a lot here, and hopefully there's some more we can cover on future episodes. Jimmy, have you come back, and in the meantime, would you mind sharing with us maybe a fun fact or maybe something about Jim Fortescue that our audience could never find online, or maybe I don't even know about, or some people no one knows about? It's a fun fact, Jimmy.
Yeah. So, the one thing that we used to do, and I still do, is, and I don't know how fun this is, but I started as a bartender, right? Because, didn't have any money at the time. And when I said before, like everybody's their own company. And then I owned a bunch of bars. And then when I was running a public company, I had to get out of those risks. And now I have a couple places again. Um, and it we used to always say that, being in the service industry as a young kid is a great, great model because you learn that some people are difficult. You learn that not everything comes out right, right? You learn that people like things clean, right? Like and that you learn that the better you behave, maybe the better you get tipped or whatever, but you also learn to work with your teammates. So it's a real nice way to kind of groom yourself at a young teenage, early ages of college, or post college as a secondary career or something like that to be in a business like that.
Yeah.
I still, own a couple places and it's fun to go in and just watch other people just enjoy themselves.
Awesome, Jimmy. Hey, look, if any of us want to follow that same journey, what's your favorite book that you would suggest us to read so we can go from bartender Danny to owner of, multi-billion dollar businesses?
So the two best books I've ever kind of really sat down and enjoyed, and as I described, like I wasn't the best student, but I didn't know that until reflection, right? I thought I was trying, but the grades never came out, which didn't mean that. And so was Outliers is a great book,
Love
right?
it.
Talks a lot about the different types of folks that you'll interface with in your career. The other book that I loved, which I think is living out in present day, Steve Case, basically started email with AOL, wrote a book called The Third Wave, which he walks through the beginning of the internet, how it changed. You would come into your house and you would hear you got mail, and
Yep.
then I'll connect through stuff like that. The second wave was how much was done for free over the internet, like Facebook, like other things, and then the third wave was it's just like the how everybody's going to monetize the internet, but really well done and how he articulates that. And if you just bring that towards Uber and and some of the things, and but the two biggest things that he believes is going to change, which works well with SymTrain, is education and healthcare. I think education is going to be the biggest, scale education by letting the best communicators simplify the hard stuff for people so it becomes exciting. Otherwise, everybody's just kind of really going to be like, why am I going to do here? And you see that happening every day, more homeschool, homeschool's popping up all over the place, electronically and things like that, because the education system continues to get challenged by for so many reasons. So
Jim, this was fun. I enjoyed getting to dig a little deeper, getting to know you even better than I already did. And I appreciate you sharing the stories with us, right? Sometimes it's hard, to share some of those stories in that conversation. But we really appreciate your time. And look, man, I look forward to those two introductions next week. That didn't go over my head. A lot of things do, but that one didn't.
yeah, I didn't say I'm going to be on that call, so you're going to have to behave.
All right, perfect.
Have a
Awesome,
good
brother. Thanks, Jimmy.